Hello, dual credit students. You're about to embark on your third essay. And as we go through and look at some of the aspects of this assignment, I think you'll realize that you've already done a lot of work towards creating your third paper. So your third paper is going to be an argument from example. For this assignment, you're going to find a persuasive speech that you find to be especially powerful or moving. And you can be creative about this. Think about a speech that is relevant to you, your interests, and this time period. You can consider slam poems, political debates, public service announcements, or other forms of speeches for this assignment. You may also pick a speech that you strongly oppose, but whichever way you feel about it, it's pretty important that you actually have strong feelings about the topic in order to make this a paper that you'll be interested in writing. Now, you've already chosen a persuasive speech and done some work with that speech in small study groups. However, if at this point, now that you've seen the assignment sheet, you want to change your speech, you certainly may. You're not locked into the choice that you originally made. But whatever speech you pick, these should be oral arguments, and the speech you choose must be contemporary, i.e. performed in the year 2020. That's negotiable. If you talk to your professor, you find something you absolutely love and it doesn't quite fit in that time frame, that is negotiable. But the point is we're trying to find something that's contemporary and relevant. Consider the overall argument the speaker conveys, and then choose a key assertion from the speech for your own consideration. Using two credible popular sources, provide at least two timely real-world examples that either support or refute the assertion. You must use a consistently objective tone, and your essay should demonstrate competency in all aspects of MLA formatting. Let's take a second to break that down. So picking a key assertion from the speech means that you're choosing a key idea or argument that the speaker makes. And in this essay, you're really not trying to specifically prove or disprove that assertion. Rather, you're exploring more of the nuances of that assertion. You may be arguing against it for certain, but your examples aren't going to be able to lock in a dead against argument for or against. Rather, you're going to use those two examples to kind of think about the meaning of the assertion and challenge some of the notions, maybe push people's thinking about what that assertion actually means. Objective tone. Now, when you're going to have an opinion and you're going to have bias, but that doesn't mean that you are going to write persuasively in this case. You're going to write an argument and you're going to use an objective tone. That means rather than going for hyperbolic language or appealing to emotion, instead you're going to be using reason and logic and keeping your tone objective and relying on reason and logic to make your case. MLA formatting is something that we can deal with after the fact, after you've got a draft. There are a lot of complicating factors in terms of MLA formatting for this paper. You're going to be adding in-text citations and a works cited page, but I don't want you to worry because we are going to work on that together as we move forward. For the time being, as long as you keep a stable link to your sources or a file for your sources and where you got it, we can go and create that works cited page in the in-text citations later. So we've already studied objective language. We've studied popular sources as in terms of Ms. Elander's lecture on those topics. We've looked at parts of an argument in terms of assertions and examples and counterexamples. And the MLA formatting stuff, as I said, we will work on a little bit later. I strongly suggest that you pick a speech that means something to you. The more you care, the more you'll be interested in investigating the issue. And you should discuss your ideas with your study group. So if you talk to your study group, hopefully that will help you think about ways that you can extend your thinking on the topic and consider the assertion you're defending or refuting for nuance rather than extremes. I have the assessment list here at the bottom, and it's really important that you always look at that assessment list because that's exactly what I'm going to use to grade your paper. If you remember the rubrics that we've been using on the A column, these are the characteristics that an A paper will have. So in this case, you're going to present an accurate summary of a persuasive speech. You're going to articulate a specific assertion from the speech. You're going to include a thesis in the introductory paragraph responding to the assertion, use at least two examples supporting the thesis, and make sure those examples are cited from credible popular sources, i.e. they are timely, they are objective in language, and they are accredited. And by accredited, I mean sort of a recognized news outlet. Throughout your essay, you should maintain a consistently objective tone and use transitions to create that sense of unity and flow. Of course, grammar and editing as always. Now what you'll see linked in here is a model argument paper written by me. I went ahead and did this assignment on my own just to kind of anticipate some of the problems and challenges and the pacing that you're going to be needing to think about. And also because I think it's a lot of times it's a lot easier to write a paper when you've seen one that's kind of in the same form. So I'm going to flip tabs over here to my example paper. You'll have access to this. You're certainly welcome to look at it, read it, think about it, share it. Okay, so just pointing out a few of the page formatting issues with this paper. I've used my MLA style page setup with the header, heading, and my title is in academic style. It sort of gives a sense of what my paper is going to be about. The title is Why Teach? A Cost-Benefit Analysis of Teaching in the Time of COVID. Okay, so I'm not going to read you this entire paper, but I do want to point out a couple of things. First of all, in the introductory paragraph, I have given you some context. What am I inspired by? Which persuasive speech was I looking at to get inspiration for this paper? And mine is a TED Talk by a man named Dr. Adam Saenz. And he gave a TED Talk called The Power of a Teacher. Within that paragraph, I have cited a couple of things that he said, and I've used parenthetical or in-text citation to indicate how, where, and why he said that. And then if you'll see here at the bottom of the paragraph, I have included the assertion that I'm going to investigate in this paper. He asserts that unless you've taught in a classroom day in and day out and done the work, there's no way you'll ever understand how incredibly demanding and challenging that vocation is, that vocation being teaching. In the next sentence, I give my response. I would consider this last sentence to be my thesis. I'm going to explain how I'm going to examine that particular assertion. In this chaotic time of COVID and an instantaneous move to virtual teaching, his statement made in 2015 may be even more true today than it was then. So that's kind of the direction that I'm going to take my argument. In the next parts of my paper, I use two examples of teachers and what they're going through to show how that is true. And so you can see I have kind of a developed example describing a teacher's experience, a teacher named Heather Davis. And in that example, I present one idea, and then I use another example that takes another angle on it, on this thesis that I've got, using a different example. So make sure you're reading those pages you were given regarding using effective examples, the textbook pages and the model essays, and think about using examples that each bring something different to the conversation and that can further explore your thesis and challenge or extend or explore the ideas in the assertion that you picked. Okay, and then in the conclusion, you can see I kind of come back to Dr. Saenz's talk, and I give some ideas about kind of how I would answer the questions that I raised in the introductory paragraph. On the last page, you'll find a works cited page, and this is the thing that I said we would work on later. A works cited page is a very specifically formatted page that indicates what your sources were. Okay, so for now, just make sure as you're writing your first drafts that you keep track of where you got your information. And then after we have drafts, we'll work on making sure that you use a properly formatted works cited page. So in essence, as you're thinking about writing this paper, just remember you're not expected to wholeheartedly prove or disprove an assertion. Rather, you're more exploring the nuances of that assertion and thinking about how that may be true or not true in real life, and using an objective tone to do so. In the previous paper, you were expected to write persuasively and to choose a tone that would evoke strong emotions from your readers. This time, I want you to really choose a path and choose a tone that's objective and that allows the reasoning and the examples that you give to do that work for you. And you're appealing to people on a more intellectual level, yet still making a convincing case. It's really important as you're going through that you take each step in a timely manner. If you try to do this all at the last minute, it might be rather stressful and it won't leave you very much time to ask for help. And ask for help you should if asking for help you need. Your professors are very willing and able to sit with you and conference with you and throw ideas around about where to find these sources. Okay, so definitely something to think about. The sooner you get started on it, the more time you'll have to look for those sources. Just to give you a quick idea of how I found my sources. Once I had picked my TED Talk, that was my first step. I then went to a search page and I typed in random things that I thought might help me explore that. I typed teacher work, or I think I typed teacher importance first. Why are teachers important? And then what I did was I clicked on the filter of news. Okay, by making that choice, it kind of directed me to particularly news articles. And then I looked for news outlets that I thought might be credible for whatever reason. So for example, a reporting newspaper, UNICEF, some of these may or may not be a credible source. So I kind of kept that in mind. Education Week, that would be probably a good source, but review your notes on what constitutes a more biased or less biased news source. But by making that one small choice of clicking on the news filter, it brought me more to those kinds of sources that I'm going to be looking for. And the sources that I found had been published that very day. And that's the benefit of using these kinds of popular sources rather than more scholarly sources, is that they're very timely. Okay, having said all that, remember that in this class, you get the chance to revise your papers. So try to do what you think is best and be willing to accept feedback if you get it somewhat wrong. Some of you may have never written this way before, and that's what you're trying to do, is experiment with new writing techniques and new writing styles so that you can grow as a writer and as an academic. Expect it to be challenging and accept that challenge with a sense of determination. And make sure you're using your resources to get help if you need it. Your resources being your study group and your professor. So that is all I have to say. And I would end my talk, as I usually do, by saying, right on.